welcome, everybody. We're here for a new episode from the Gutter to Greatness with my guest who just disappeared for a second in the camera, but that's okay. You know, we're excited to have her here. This episode is called "Only God Can Judge Me." This woman has an amazing story of gutter to greatness again, where she's taken all kinds of lumps and bruises, but continues to shine as the star that she is. She's a brilliant legal mind. She is someone that we definitely want to understand and hear her story, and can't wait to she tells it to us. So we have with us today Leticia Astacio. So Leticia, can you kind of tell us what do you do? And why should anyone care?
Okay, well, excuse me, I'm a little bit sick. I am currently a defense attorney in Rochester, New York. I know that you're familiar with Rochester, but for those of the community that are not aware, Rochester is a small city with a pretty high percentage of people of color, and the majority of them live in pretty extreme poverty. We have a failing school district. We have a pretty dismal situation for the people of color in this society. So being a defense attorney here means dealing primarily with people of color who have had a difficult start and maybe don't have the resources or are struggling with mental health issues and poverty and lack of parents in the home. It can be a very difficult position, and I interact with a lot of people who are struggling on a regular and consistent basis. So I think that I have some insight that is helpful to people dealing with things that help them kind of transition through some of the struggles that they may deal with either with criminal law or family law. And I think that's incredibly important for our society. But furthermore, that has been my own situation. You know, growing up in the city of Rochester, my parents dealt with substance abuse issues. I dealt with poverty. I was the first in my family to graduate from high school. And I did that after I had a child of my own, and then went to college, ultimately went to law school. Became a prosecutor, became a judge, became a private attorney before being a judge. It's just been a long road. And I think that ultimately, irrespective of what anyone else would say, I've been pretty successful along the way. And if I'm honest, it's not always very easy for people to make that transition out of poverty and, I guess, the gutter, as you would call it, to greatness and affluence and being an educated person. It's a very different role. Additionally, most people say the hardest part of being in like the boys club is getting in. And I definitely think that's true. I got in when no one wanted me, got kicked out, and then kicked the door down and came back in again. So I think that,
and that's we got to get to all that. So slow down, Skipper. Like, whoa, like
you said, why should you care? I'm like, let me show you something.
Okay, so I get you, and y'all, she's using all her big words and her lawyer speak. Like I'm a little nervous, like she's gonna sue me or something. So you know, and I know that I want to dig into it, and I know a little bit of the story. We've had some conversations in the past, and I think what is interesting also, as I want people to understand, is like you said, exactly where you came from. So you started on, and correct me if I'm wrong, but did you grow up on the west side of Rochester?
Northwest. I grew up, I don't want any West Siders to come for me. I was not 14619. I grew up on the Northwest. I was always 14610. So I grew up off of Lyle Avenue on Sherman Street. Arthur Shawcross actually killed my neighbor because I was like on Hooker's Row. So yeah, that's right. I grew up.
That, you know, and that's acceptable. That still gets lumped into the West Side, not completely West Side.
No, the real West Siders wouldn't have me.
No, they wouldn't. I'm from the East Side, so but that area though, Sherman Street, has always been ridden with crime, with drugs, with prostitution. So that area was definitely rough growing up. And so, and I heard you say you were the first person in your family to graduate high school, and then, and I think you did all of this rather, like, I know that you became a judge rather young, and it was rather quickly. What was some of that process like? Like, talk to us a little bit about how you grew up, and not even getting to some of the other things, but just what was the mindset? What was the mentality? What was it like for you growing up as little Leticia on Sherman Street?
It was difficult. My parents were wonderful people, are wonderful people, and I think that they did an amazing job, but they did the best that they could with the resources they had, right? And they didn't have any resources and they didn't know how to parent. They were surviving. So life was difficult for me. It was not as difficult as it is for a lot of people in Rochester, because my parents always stressed the importance of education, and it didn't matter what they were going through in their personal life. It never was a reason for me to not do what they expected. My parents could be completely strung out on drugs. It didn't matter. I needed to get up and go to school, and they would check. They would make sure they were parents to the best of their ability, and they made sure of certain things. So like growing up on Sherman Street, I wasn't allowed to have friends. It's a rough neighborhood. And my parents were like, those people aren't going where you're going. We don't want you to be interacting with people that change the trajectory of where you're going. So they didn't really let me outside of the fence. I couldn't interact with anyone. And I went to an urban suburban school. I went to school in Irondequoit. So I would have to get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning to catch the bus downtown to get a transfer to go to Irondequoit to catch another bus to get to school. So I knew all of the prostitutes because they were the only people that were up when I was up walking to the bus.
So give me one of their names. Give me Trixie's name. What was Trixie?
There was one. Roxanne was her name. She was my absolute favorite.
Why was she your favorite?
She was just so nice. She would talk to me and she would walk me to the bus stop and she would wait with me. And so this is how I got in trouble for like the first time, right? I'm like in first grade and I'm walking to the bus stop with Roxanne because she's my girl. And we're talking about life. And my mom, who doesn't let me out of the gate ever, is like, what are you doing? Because I'm walking down the street with a prostitute who's like working, you know, she's flashing people in the middle of walking to the bus.
She's like, hey, Leticia, I'm going to get you there safely. And then turns around and says,
she's like, I'm working, but let's go. She was super nice. So yeah, so that was my first experience with like, no, the neighborhood.
But you know what? I think did that frame. So and what's interesting to me is like, I like to deal in experiences at times. And so it sounds like that experience may have even been something that framed why you do what you do and why you wanted to be who you are. Do you have any insight on that? Do you think that type of experience, those experiences did have any push or pull on what you do?
You know, it's funny. I never even thought about the correlation, but I'm sure it did. I've always knew that I was interested in defense work because I'm a fairly non-judgmental person. I think that most times if a person is accused of a crime, you can see why they might have done it. You can always find a reason that activity made sense. You know, so I've always struggled with that. I've had family members accused of crimes. I've had loved ones incarcerated, and I've always felt like it was kind of unfair and I didn't think it was appropriate. But you're right, from a very early age, you know, I was only 5-6 years old. It was very clear you're not supposed to do this, but I liked that person. I didn't see them as a bad person that deserved to be punished. Or, you know what I mean? I felt like she had a job. Everybody's got to have a job, unfortunately.
Not definitely. And then, so you got through and you graduate. Did you graduate high school in Irondequoit?
I did. I got pregnant with my daughter when I was in 11th grade. And I actually, at that point, me and my parents were in a very different place. I was on the brink of dropping out of high school. I wasn't living at home. I moved out when I was like 14 and I was living with my boyfriend and I got pregnant. And when it was very funny. I was working at Arby's. I made $4.15 an hour. I was barely going to school. And he sold crack. And that was like, yes, we're going to make it. This is like everybody's dream. We're going to be fine. I'm going to live high on the hog. And then I got pregnant and I was like, oh my God, I can't do any of this anymore. I immediately like changed everything, started going to school, finished school, went to college, because when it was just me, it was like, whatever, I can make crazy decisions. But when I knew that I was going to be responsible for another person, it was like, I can't take care of a person and move like this. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I had to change everything. So I did graduate from high school, but I wasn't going to. I was going to totally fail out.
And so what were some of those thoughts, mindsets, or struggles that you remember going through? Like, because the gutter, to as I explain on here all the time, is that it's not always about where you live or where you're from, and sometimes it's where you're at, and it's your mindset, and your mindset is one that is stuck in a place that it's hard to get out of. And then you shift into a different mindset, which creates an opportunity to rise to greatness. And so what was that mindset like when you were young? Because, the person that I've gotten to know here is someone who is extremely bright. I'd say brighter than a lot of folks that you probably come in contact with, and just have a very strong ability. But it sounds like you were on the verge of throwing that away. What were the struggles, or what were the thoughts that made you want to even potentially throw away your ability and your talent?
I think that life can be overwhelming when you are dealing with a lot of external stressors as opposed to just like being a normal kid. And it was like, I don't want to do this. I went to a predominantly white school in a very racist neighborhood that was incredibly difficult to get to. My teachers were very frustrated with me because I was perpetually homeless and they didn't have anyone they could tell on me, right? I live alone. So yes, I'm 14, but I came to school late today because I caught 4 buses and I slept at my boyfriend's last night, and you're lucky I came. Who are you going to tell? Are you going to tell my mom? She's not going to call. I don't live with her. So how are you going to penalize me? In high school, that became an issue. My principal actually used to tell me, you're going to be the biggest attorney ever because like nobody can do anything to you. You can argue your way out of anything. I remember when I got pregnant with Jaya, I told you I hadn't been going to school. I came back to school and I was like, all right, I'm going to stop doing that now. I'm not going to drop out anymore. I'm going to go to school now. And they were like, okay, you've got in-school suspension for the next 6 months. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. If you're going to give me in-school suspension, I'm going to go back home and I'm not coming back to school. If I'm coming back to school, it's so I can do my work. I'm not going to be penalized. That's dumb. Right. And we worked it out so that instead of in-school suspension, they would let me go to class and then I was going to fail because I hadn't gone to gym. So for 6 periods, they gave me ISS and I went and did gym so that I could pass anyway. But we negotiated a disposition because I wasn't going to do it. I was like, I'm not going to forget it and I'll fail. I'll get a GED. And I guess I've always kind of been that person where if things don't make sense, I'm not going to do them. I'm going to do them my way. And I think that's just been when I'm sure of myself about something, I'm sure my parents kind of taught me that to know what you know. Right. And when I know what I know, you're not going to convince me of anything else. So yes, my mindset changed dramatically. And then once I know something, you're going to know it too. And I'm going to convince you. I'm going to convince you. Right.
I've heard and I've seen that. So, and what is the thought that comes to my mind is that you got it together, a gear or a light switch came on, and then like you were almost became like an unstoppable force where you made your mind up, like you said, and you were going to push through no matter what. So then you went, where did you attend college at and law school and those pieces? And how did all that happen as you had a child too? Because this show is all about hopefully that there's people who can identify with the stories that they hear and that they can realize if this person is able to pull themselves up by them bootstraps and do something differently, I can do it too. Right. So, and so what was that kind of journey after you graduated high school? You just had a baby and that is we know it's hard to have kids and especially at a young age. So what was next? What did that look like?
I finished high school and I hadn't been on the college track at all, right? Like I said, I hadn't been going to school. I was planning to drop out. So I hadn't been prepared. I just went to MCC, but I was super focused. So I actually finished MCC in a year. So I graduated from high school in 99. Then I graduated from MCC in 2000. Then I went to UB. And I stayed there. I graduated from UB in 2002 with my associates, and then I graduated in 2006 with my master's and my JD in law. I got admitted to the bar in 2007, and I started working in the district attorney's office. In law school, I didn't get married, but I met who became my husband later and decided to have a baby because school's not hard enough unless I have a child. And so I had a baby, but I passed the bar the first time, got out, came back to Rochester and started working. I worked at Lonnie, which is a not-for-profit, and then I worked at the DA's office. And it was just a really whirlwind, crazy experience because that's not the life I had ever saw for myself. You know what I mean? As soon as I got pregnant, though, I knew my parents became drug users from being drug dealers. And I think I idolized that lifestyle because of that. I didn't want her to have the same lifestyle as me. So as soon as I got pregnant, I was like, oh, I don't want to do anything that I'm doing. I'm doing what I know to do. This isn't what I want for my child, though. You know what I mean?
Right. And so where was where was your daughter? It was your daughter, right? The first child was a daughter?
Yes. So my family helped me immensely.
Right.
When I went to MCC, I was at MCC from 7 o'clock in the morning until 3:30 in the afternoon. I would come home, feed her, and then go to work from 5:30 until 10:30. I was not hardly a parent, but my mom owns a daycare. Both of my little sisters own daycares. My family has a lot of women. And so there was a ton of support, and that was incredibly helpful and instrumental. I think that it's sad that you see less family support now, because we've always relied on that for success in our culture and in our community. You know what I mean? Being able to rely on other people to help us. And I think that as that falls by the wayside, people have less opportunity for success, unfortunately. I never would have made it without my family. And I don't just mean that when my daughter was little. I mean, time and time and time again, I never would have made it without my family.
Now, as you progressed and you, what did you think you were going to be doing? If you had a prediction when you were younger, what was that? What did that look?
When I was a little kid, I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be in front of somebody's camera. I wanted to be talking. I wanted to be a news anchor, a radio person, but I always wanted to be front and center, telling people what they should do and how they should think.
Oh, bossy.
I'm a bit bossy. I always like that, though. I like being on the screen. I like theater. I'm a little dramatic. That was what I thought. And when I went to school, I planned on going and majoring in theater. And my parents were like, that's not even a real job. Yeah, no. You've got a kid, like, you're wild. What are you doing? So I majored in English.
But what it sounds like is every time you refer to your parents and you talk about them, you have put them in a very positive light in terms of this conversation, which is cool. But I'm also hearing you say that they started off dealing, then they were addicted to drugs, but they still were there and supported. They still put values into you. They still put these things into you, but they struggled with their own trauma. And so like that their trauma that they had, and then the trauma that it probably created for you, what type of things did you go through because of that trauma? What trauma did it create for you? Because it seems like they really tried to do their best, even though they struggled.
They totally did. And I think that I'm somebody's parent, right? And so I think that in my big grown age, I have a lot of grace now for my parents, and for the fact that I think that parents do the best that they can. Having said that, my parents didn't do a very good job. You know what I mean? They did the best that they could, but they were traumatized and they had traumatic childhoods. So I witnessed a lot of domestic violence. My parents were abusive, physically, verbally. They were absent sometimes. Sometimes we didn't have basic things like gas and electricity. We were impoverished. Once they used drugs, they were using drugs. We owned our home, but my parents would fight physically. We would move out. We would go stay with somebody else. We would go back, just the constant struggles that people deal with when they're just surviving. Can you keep the RG&E on? RG&E in the wintertime in Rochester can be a mortgage on top of a mortgage. Just normal problems like that. We always had food, and I can't say the RG&E was off a lot. I think it happened one time. My house was never dirty, but my parents didn't have the capacity to parent. They did the thing. They knew very much, like, you need to go to school. Go to school. They didn't know, like, getting to school, that is your problem. You're in kindergarten, it doesn't matter. I'm not driving. Getting home from school, that is you know what I mean? Like I remember when I was trying to go to college, I was doing the FAFSA, and I was like, Mom, I don't know how to do this. She was like, so what? You're smart. I remember when I was getting my master's in social work saying, Mom, I think we've got some trauma. I think maybe we should go to a therapist. And she was like, you just got a master's degree. Therapize your own self. And I was like,
that's funny. What it says to me is it's still, and what I'm gathering from this whole thing is a choice and you're choosing to have a positive perspective and outlook on this, regardless of the things that you've been through. And I think that's part of what makes the difference. Your outlook and your perspective, and for other people who might be going through trauma or have traumatic backgrounds, is making a choice not to let it ruin you or make it sour you or turn you into a victim. And you are choosing to use it in the form of strength and still see positive in it, still see the good things out of it, still see the glasses half full instead of half empty. And I think that's to be commended. But I think it also says a lot about your attitude and mentality, because I waited to ask you the question that I usually ask sooner. Is I wanted you to tell your gutter story. And I wanted to get to a point, knowing some of your story, to where you have, you tell it from the perspective of, and you can tell it any way you want to do it. I don't want to dictate your narrative, right? But what I've found very interesting is the things that happen to you. See, for people who don't know, is that you you were a very prominent attorney and became a judge rather quickly, and you were everywhere. Like everybody heard your name. Everybody knew, like, who is this Black and Hispanic girl who is now a judge, and she's young and like almost like the it girl. And then all of a sudden you had all of these issues, and walk everybody through what happened and what you went through and what that was like.
Oh, geez. I don't know. I probably have a lot less grace for this experience than I do for my parents.
But that's okay, because you know what? Because it shows that you're human, and you don't have to have grace here on this show. That's the good thing is just say what it is.
Well, so I was a district attorney, like I said, and I enjoyed doing that job to a degree until I didn't enjoy it anymore. So I stopped. I always knew that I wanted to do defense work. Always, always. I just feel more aligned with defendants. I feel like prosecution is based in slavery. I don't feel like it's really right. But I wanted to go to the DA's office to learn how to do trials. And because as a district attorney, you can make deals. When I didn't feel like I could make deals anymore, I left. I went into private practice. I loved private practice. And honestly, that was always my goal. I didn't always want to be a judge. A lot of people, my goal was always to have my own practice. But in private practice, I got really frustrated because I would think, okay, I have this client. I know this is the right way to handle this case. I know this is the right resolution. And I would go to the judge and the judge would say no. And I'd be pissed. Like, I'm right. You're not right. And I don't have the power to make you do what I want, because sometimes you can't win the case. Sometimes the facts are the facts and you just can't win. So I was like, I think I want to be a judge. And it came in the back of my mind, and I was like, no, I don't like politics. I don't want to be bothered. Long story short, I kept having this feeling like God was telling me I was supposed to be a judge. And I'm like, this is crazy. I don't even, I kept having this feeling. And a friend of mine ran for office, and all of the judges' seats were full. And I was walking back from her swearing in, and I started having this nagging feeling again, like, you're supposed to run. And I was like, right. There's not even a seat. There's not even a seat available for me to run for. Like, leave me alone. And a friend texted me, the legislature just created a 10th seat for judge. Are you ready, Your Honor? And in that moment, literally, I was like, oh, I'm going to shut up. I guess I'm running for judge. I felt like it was something that God had ordained that I was supposed to do. And I don't normally feel like that.
No, absolutely. No, I was saying that I believe in those type of experiences. And I'm sure it was all meant to happen the way that it happened.
Which was really difficult for me later, because I was like, this was your plan, sir? Like, excuse me. But so I decided to run, and I was not the favorite. I was not the candidate. The Democrats did not care for me. And when I say the Democrats, I don't mean the people, I mean the party. I was not the fan favorite at all. And they told me not to run. They told me I was too young. They told me I was being arrogant to think that I could be a judge. They told me that the people didn't want me. And then they didn't choose me as the primary candidate. There were 3 of us, and there were 2, I say white men. One of the men refers to himself, I think, as Hispanic, but I think he would pick Hispanic white, but I don't know. I don't want to speak for anyone else. But there were 2 other people that were running and they endorsed the white candidate, like literally a white male over me. The Democratic Party did. And I was heartbroken, but I had already decided at that point that I was going to be obedient. And so it didn't matter. I was running. And then I ran and I won by a landslide. I just crushed them in the primary. The people were very, very loudly in support of me. And it was one of the proudest moments of my entire life, not just because I won, but because I won when they said nobody wants you. Like literally the day of the election, before the polls opened, the news station broadcasted that I lost.
Really?
I lost with I think I got 2 votes and the polls hadn't even opened yet, but they broadcasted it for 3 hours on their website that I had lost the election. People were calling me saying, how is it over? I was going to vote for you. Only in Rochester, you know what I mean? So I felt like, wow, you guys were so against me. It wasn't a neutral, may the best man win kind of thing. It was F you. And I killed you. I crushed you. I'm so young. I'm so arrogant. I'm so inexperienced. And the people spoke loudly and I killed both of you.
Right. So Rochester's always been very corrupt and corrupt politically in the educational system. And I'm sure that was by design that they did that. So you won, you became this judge. Then what?
Then when I got there, it felt more of the same. When I got there, I literally didn't have a chambers. There was no place physically, literally for me to be. I didn't have paper. I didn't have a computer. I didn't have pens. I didn't have any accessories. When they did give me an office, it was on the 5th floor, even though my secretary was on the 1st floor. I had no support. I had no type of training. It was bad. It was uncomfortable. And my colleagues were loud about the fact that they did not pick me. They picked the other people that lost the election.
Crazy.
So it was a very awkward space. And then I was on the bench for, I want to say I was on the bench for a month. And then my cousin was murdered. February 13th, 2015, I believe. No, 2014. No, 2015 is right. 2015, February 13th, 2015. My little cousin was shot in the head and murdered in Rochester. And I was just going into part 2. And I didn't have a lot of cases. And so I started taking off Mondays and Fridays. I just didn't schedule court. And when I say taking them off, that doesn't mean I didn't go to work, but I didn't schedule court on Mondays and Fridays to go help my family and prepare and whatever. And one of the judges literally went on the record while the media was present in court and said that I was stealing from the taxpayers, that I had been not reporting to work, that I didn't deserve my salary, that I was treating the job like a part-time job, and I was defrauding the county out of their money. Judges don't have time clocks. You know that, right?
Right.
I don't know, in your position, you probably have to be at work significantly more than we do, but judges come and go as they please.
I don't have a time clock either where I'm at. I'm the CEO here, so I kind of do what I need to. It just has to get done.
Right. But I figure you're probably there all day because it's like a school and kids, you know what I mean? But when my cases are done, I do what I want to do.
When I was at the school,
I was.
I'm not in the school anymore.
I didn't know that. I thought you were still there.
No, I've been back in Rochester for a while, but I run an organization called Charter Champions in Rochester that supports.
I thought you were doing both.
No, I'm not in Albany anymore, and I'm actually trying to open 2 schools, one in Rochester, one in Niagara Falls. And so
you told me that, but I thought you were doing both, and I thought you were gonna stop doing the other one once you open the new ones. I didn't know you were totally back. I was like, I saw you on a plane, of course.
No, I'm totally back, and just been working to support these 25 charter schools, which is a full-time job, and trying to put more educators of color within the schools, and trying to make sure there's better pathways for them, and everything I can to support and create more equity due to the really a lack in funding and a lack of support for charter schools. So that's kind of what I'm doing. So no, I'm full time though. So
that's taking all your time. Good for you. I didn't realize. Yeah, I thought you were wearing 15 million different hats. That's what I told you. Every time I talk to you, you've picked up a new job.
Yeah, I'm a hustle man. I try to get it done, and I just And another thing that is in line with what you're saying, I try to do what God wants me to do. And so like, and I feel like God pushes me and moves me in certain directions. I try to go that way. And I try to go that route. And I know that you're following this, and for them and for those judges to say those things, you know, it's got to be hurtful and upsetting, because you were obviously working and doing other things behind the scenes that you needed to do. You just didn't have your trials that day. So then what ended up happening?
Well, even, yes, that's true. But even aside from that, you can look in an atmosphere and see, like, everybody knows that the judges go and do their calendar and do what they want to. That's how it works. Like, that's
Right.
so it's crazy for you to single me out. What happened is ultimately nothing. I went to my supervisor. I just kept having a lot of issues at work. From the beginning, I kept having issues. I got talked to. One judge took all of my cases because they told me how to run my schedule. Like, it was constantly issues. And they told me, look, just, you're the new person. They're ragging on you because you basically say you're going to do whatever you want to. Just shut up. Tell them, yeah, you're right. I'll do it your way. And then do whatever you want to still. And honestly, I couldn't do it.
No, that's not you.
I couldn't do it. I'm like a little embarrassed to say it because they were not wrong. I should have just shut up and been like, what do you want me to do with my schedule? Oh, okay. Yes, massa. I'm going to go change my schedule right now to accommodate you.
No,
But
you were
instead,
fighting the injustice.
I was like, you're not the boss of me. I'm an elected official just like you. If you don't like my schedule, stop looking at it. And if you want to talk about it somewhere, we can fight.
And you know, Rochester needs more of that, because Rochester is a place where people let a lot of things that are wrong and bad go on, and they don't stand up for it. And it's crazy because what people do stand up for is a lot of like hood nonsense, is a lot of or a lot of the wrong things. And so, you know, it's an interesting, very, very dark place. That it's crazy the things that go on here, because there's not enough of us standing up for what's right. So I know you. So flash forward to some of how long was it before the certain incidents happened and you ended up removing yourself or being removed from what you were doing?
I didn't remove my own self. I refused to remove. I know. But so I got sworn in, and my first day on the bench was January 1st, 2015.
Right.
That's why I had to remember. So January 1st, 2015 right. My first day. February 13th, 2015, my cousin gets murdered. February 13, 2016, I get arrested for DWI at 7 o'clock in the morning on my way to the gym in Gates. There is a blizzard going on, as happens in Rochester. And I have arraignments that morning because I am the judge that happens to have arraignments in February. So even though it's a Saturday, I have to go to court. And I wake up and I'm in a pissy mood. My cousin got murdered today. Right. It's the anniversary of his death. Also, I'm divorced now. This is my first year being not married ever. Right. So I wake up around 7 and I'm already like in a shitty mood. And there is a class that has body pump at the YMCA, which is like a workout class. And I kind of leaned on working out when I was getting divorced. And when I started working out heavily, I lost a lot of weight. And that was like my crutch. I was like a crazy workout girl. I'm not now. Don't judge me. COVID happened, but then I was like super, super fit, and body pump was my favorite class. So I got up to go to body pump, and there was a blizzard. It had started snowing Thursday, and it essentially didn't stop until Tuesday. And I was driving to the Elm Grove YMCA, which I don't know. I don't know the
street from my house.
Okay, yes. But you know, you're going towards the airport. As I'm going towards the airport, my car kind of like gets all wobbly, and it's a blizzard. I still don't know if I hit a rock, if the guy said he thinks my tire blew out. But whatever happens, I totally lose control of my car. I'm in the left lane because I'm not going to lie to you. I drive like a demon. I drive better in the snow, but I drive like I don't have any sense. I drive way too fast. I lose control of my vehicle, and I believe that I ultimately hit the median. While this is happening, I thought I just hit the rumble strips, but I get control of my vehicle. I pull over to the curb. I call a friend and I'm like, hey, I have a flat. You have to come get me. It's a blizzard. I'm not going to get out of my car because my car is like right next to traffic and it's a blizzard. People are going off the road and I have to go to court. So hurry up. Such a good friend. I don't know why anybody's friends with me, but I'm like, I have court at 9:30. I have to do arraignments. So I need you to get up immediately because it's a blizzard. It's going to take you forever. And I have on sweatpants and like a track jacket. We got a lot of stuff to do now.
Right.
They're like, all right, no worries. Here I come. So I'm just sitting in my car waiting. And a trooper comes up behind me. He doesn't pull me over because I'm pulled over. He comes up behind me, turns his lights on. Now, I'm not even going to lie to you. I was like, oh, thank goodness. He can put his car over here. Then when my friend comes, he can move over. Like, I'm literally already assigning the trooper how he's going to help me section my car off so they can fix my flats because I got to go to work. And that's all I'm thinking about. And so when the trooper comes up, I roll down my window. I roll down the passenger window because I'm familiar with a law where the troopers are supposed to go to the passenger side and you're supposed to change lanes. And I bring that up, it became an issue later. Like, why would the passenger window be down? But it's supposed to be down. So anyways, I roll down the window and he's like, were you in an accident? And I'm like, no, I have a flat because I haven't gotten out of my car. I never look at my car. I stay in it. He's like, well, get out of your car. I get out of the car and I look and the car has damage to the front of it. I'm like, oh shit, I must have actually hit the median. He's like, you didn't know? I'm like, no, I hit the rumble strips. So he goes, where are you going? And I said, well, I have to go to court now, but I was going to the gym. Again, he took that to think that I was confused because I'm going the opposite direction of court, but I was going to the gym. My plans changed once I got this flat. So he says to me, he said, I smelled fruity. And I was like, I put mango butter in my hair. Like, we had a very brief conversation and I didn't have my ID on me. I didn't know where it was. And I said, I don't have my ID. I can give you my license number. I know it by heart. You can look it up. Now, all of these things are very typical for me, unfortunately. I speed. I don't always carry my identification. I'm pretty well known in Rochester. Most of the cops know me. This cop did not know me, but most of the cops know who I am, and they're familiar with my lack of responsibility as well. So it's not usually an issue.
Right.
But so this particular cop, he said something to me about smelling fruity. He said, did you have anything to drink today? And I was like, no, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. Like, I don't get drunk at the ass crack of dawn. And
so for the record, there was no alcohol involved with this.
No, I had not had anything to drink. I was literally going to the gym. I had nothing to drink that morning, which is part of why I was so incredibly angry, because not for nothing, if I would have been drunk, I don't care. Nobody cares about DWIs in real life. In Rochester, people get DWIs constantly all the time and nothing happens. They get a fine. So I wouldn't have to lie about it. You know what I mean? It's not like an offense that somebody cared about. Most of the judges and attorneys have DWIs. They just got off, or they got them and you don't even know. So it was really annoying to me that it was like this crime of the century. I'm like, you guys don't even give a shit about a DWI. But I was not drinking that morning. And that's why I was so mad. So the cop says to me, did you drink? And I said, no. Then he said, okay, I need you to come sit in my car because you don't have ID. And I said, no. I said, I'm not sitting in your car. I gave you my driver's license number. My car is disabled, so I can't leave. There's no threat of me pulling off. You don't have to worry. I'm not a flight risk. I'm not getting in your car. I'll get back in my car. And at this point, I felt uncomfortable. My phone was in my car. I didn't have the ability to communicate with anyone. And I went to get back in my car, and he said, you're under arrest. He put his hand on my door and I said, I'm not under arrest. I'm under arrest for what? Now I'm getting an attitude, if I'm honest. And he said, you can either get in my car and be under arrest, or you'll get a resisting arrest in addition to that. And I said, I'm under arrest for what? And he said, DWI. I said, you literally didn't do one field sobriety test. You have no probable cause. You have no basis, no reasonable suspicion. You didn't see me driving a vehicle at all. You have no basis to arrest me for DWI. You can't ask me to do any field sobriety test now because you can't develop probable cause after an arrest. So you're saying I'm under arrest for DWI and I've done nothing. You don't even know what the hell you're doing. Can you call somebody who actually knows what they're doing? So that was honestly, again, in retrospect, not maybe the best idea, right? I don't have any identification. I haven't told anyone I'm a judge. I have on yoga pants and a t-shirt. I literally just rolled out of bed. I'm driving a 2008 Hyundai Veracruz. And it has body damage all around it because I've hit my house. My 17-year-old drives it like it's destroyed. I don't look like anybody's judge. And now I've gotten out of the car and I've told the trooper that he doesn't know the law and that I know more than he does. And I look like some ghetto, ignorant Black girl as far as he's concerned. And he is pissed. He is super pissed. He gets an attitude again. He threatens to charge me with resisting arrest. And I'm like, you know what? I know the law. I know that this isn't sufficient probable cause for a DWI. I don't have to act irate. Get in his car. Just, this is going to work out. He's going to get in his car, try to be compliant, appease him. I got in his car. I continued to talk to him. I asked him to allow me to do field sobriety test. I did the alphabet test. I did the counting test. Wow, I think I finally I had to say, I think F to T without singing and without stopping, backwards and forwards. And I had to count backwards and forwards. And I did both and I passed. And I was like, all right, can we stop doing this now? So I changed, right? I got done being mad and I tried to persuade him. I'm like, okay, now you see you've made a mistake. Stop before this goes too far. Then my friend that I had called came and he happened to be an attorney. And when my friend got there, he was like, she's a judge, right? And the guy was like, no. And he was like, yeah, you really fucked up. Like, she's not drunk. She's mad. And she's a judge and you didn't have any basis to arrest her. Like, this is not going to go well. And I say all of that to say that, it did go well. I got arrested and I had a trial and I blame myself again because I had a bench trial and I shouldn't have. I had way too much faith in the system that had been screwing me and I already knew it would screw me. But I thought people hate judges. And I thought that I knew there wasn't enough for a conviction, so I didn't have a jury trial. And I think I'll regret that for the rest of my life.
So for clarification, the bench trial is when a judge can decide the fate of guilty or innocence versus the jury deciding it. Is that accurate?
Yes. And in my case, I would have had a jury of 6 of my peers, and I could have had an all city jury. So it would have been only city residents who got to judge me. And I really, really wanted to do that. But my attorney was adamant that there was absolutely no way the judge would convict me because there wasn't sufficient evidence. And I knew as an attorney that there wasn't sufficient evidence. So I already felt confident about that. And I didn't feel like I could trust myself in terms of making decisions. Like, should I trust the judge or the jury? Because I knew I was very emotional. I hired an attorney because I knew that I couldn't necessarily think about the law properly, but it was very difficult because I wanted to handle my case myself. I didn't feel like anybody could possibly be as invested as me. You know what I mean? And I had a lot of conflict with my attorney in the underlying DWI, but we had a hearing and I didn't think the hearing went well. And I was like, the judge essentially called me a racist. And he did. And I was like, I don't think a bench trial is the right choice. But when we had the trial, again, it went really, really well. And I was like, there's absolutely no way. There's the ability to ask for a lesser included. So what that means is they read DWI and the judge can also consider, well, maybe you weren't actually drunk. Maybe you were just impaired. And I didn't ask for impaired, because I was confident that I wasn't intoxicated. And from the beginning, they had offered me impaired and I refused. I was like, no, sorry, I'm not taking it. I didn't do it. I'm not going to plead guilty to something I didn't do. But the judge came back with a DWI almost immediately. And essentially he said that I cursed, and I did curse. I cursed the trooper completely out once he really arrested me. Cursed him out, up and down. I was like, you're ruining my fucking life for no reason, just because I got you angry and you didn't want to be told to, put in your place by a Black woman. I cursed him out up and down. And essentially the judge said that he didn't think that that's the way judges spoke. And he couldn't find any reason but for intoxication that I would have spoken to a police officer that way.
Right. And it's so crazy because at the end of the day, I believe it came back to the fact that there were people in powers to be that didn't want you there in the first place. And so, and obviously you can only make an inference here, but my inference is that, he was part of that, especially being with Rochester politics, and then did something that was corrupt. And, that's why people don't like the system.
The judge that presided over my case was from Ontario County. He was hand selected by the administrative judge at that time that I had been having ongoing conflict with, that I had accused of creating a hostile work environment and discriminating against people of color in my job. Literally, I think that happened in maybe September, or no, I think it happened a few months before. And then in August, I was arrested and charged. And he was like, I have a judge that I can put on this case. And he picked the judge who was going to ultimately retire. And then when my appeal went up, he also picked the judge that handled my appeal, who handled my appeal, said nothing was wrong, and then immediately retired afterwards.
So with the whole DWI thing, like you said, in most cases in Rochester, unless somebody gets hurt, it's usually just a fine or something small the first time. So did you ended up doing jail time behind this charge?
I did. I got a fine, and then I had a violation of the DWI, and I had a million of them. I had a million gabillion of them, honestly. None of them were real except for one. There was one where I got a violation I had like an ignition interlock in my car that I had to blow into. Now, I got a million violations for that. But right after the conviction, the trial happened in, I don't remember, but the conviction came in, I think, August. I think the trial was in August. I don't remember when the conviction was, but I remember I came back in November. But right after the conviction, I went back to my boss again because I didn't have a choice. It's not that I really felt like I trusted these people. It was that I didn't have anyone else. You know what I mean? They were the only people I could go to. I went back to my boss and I said, I don't believe that I struggled with alcoholism at all. I was not drunk on this day, but I do believe that I am in danger of suffering from alcoholism now. I said, this conviction has destroyed my faith in almost everything. I cannot believe that, and I felt very personally attacked. I'm like, I can't believe that you guys wanted to control how I behave this bad. I get it now. You taught me, you've shown me that I'm not bigger than the system. I have to do whatever you say. They had asked me to go to a rehab facility as soon as I was arrested. And I was like, and I know that I can't do that. That's almost an admission of guilt. I'll wait until the trial is over. So I said, I want to be very clear. I'm willing to go to this rehab facility right now. I still don't think I'm an alcoholic, but I know that I'm struggling with serious depression. And I know that I don't know how to pull myself out of this. I was like, I'm a criminal. I'm 35 years old. I've never been arrested in my life. My whole life has been the opposite of this. And not for nothing, I don't even believe in drunk driving. I think it's a horrible crime. There's so many people that deserve to die. And when you drive drunk, you just kill random strangers that you don't even know. So I was really frustrated. And I went to them and I said I wanted to go inpatient. And they kept giving me the runaround. And ultimately, they never let me go. They said that I didn't need to go inpatient. But I say all that to say that I was drinking now heavily. And not for pleasure, really. I was going to work all week. They weren't allowing me to work. I was literally just sitting in my office, staring at the walls, doing nothing. They were watching me to make sure that I was there from 9 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. They would literally come by my office and check. They would have the deputies check. It was so uncomfortable. And I would come home from work on Friday. I would get some type of hard liquor, which I normally drink wine. I would get rum, usually rum, and I would drink until Sunday night. So one Monday morning, I was going to work. And again, I had not drank any alcohol this morning at all. I had my 18-year-old in the passenger seat who has a license, got my kids together, got my protein shake, got in the car, blew in the thing, and it said I had been consuming alcohol. I had her get in the driver's seat and drive instead. You might have seen this. It was broadcasted that I made my kids blow in the breathalyzer so I could drive my car. No, I made my kid blow in the breathalyzer because you have to do it to start the car. And she was driving because it said I had alcohol in my system. So I immediately got out of the driver's seat. Now, again, I did not drink that day, but I was drinking all weekend. And the breathalyzer did not say I was drunk. It didn't say, if I would have been driving a car, I wouldn't have registered as intoxicated, but I was not allowed to consume alcohol at the time.
Right. So just again, for clarity for the audience and people who are listening, so that when you were getting in the car, you hadn't drinking anything. You had a device because of the DWI conviction that you had to blow in before you drove your car. And so when you blew on it, it registered that there had been alcohol in your system.
I think it was a 0.03, which is not even illegal, but I was not allowed to consume alcohol at all.
Got you. And you had been consuming it, but still wasn't, you weren't getting ready to drive. So your child, you have her drive. She has a license and she gets in the car and blows in it because you have to before you can drive.
Right.
And then she drives. So what happens? They called that the violation. That was
the violation. Was me blowing into the device because I had consumed alcohol, and I had definitely been consuming. So the violation was essentially that I had blown into the device and I had consumed alcohol. And when I went back to court, I said, honestly, I didn't realize that the judge had ordered me to not consume alcohol because that is not a condition of a DWI conviction. I was sentenced to the minimums. The minimums is a fine and a surcharge. The judges don't have to tell you. I did an evaluation. They said I didn't have a drug and alcohol problem. So why would you tell me, an adult, that I can't drink alcohol for a year?
Right.
You can. He can totally do it. But that wasn't clear to me. So I said, I'm sorry. I cried. You don't even know how big a deal it is for me to cry. And I felt so embarrassed because I felt like I was humbling myself to the administration. They had told me to do it in the beginning and I wouldn't do it. And now I was like eating crow and saying, okay, you guys want to embarrass me. You want to humiliate me. That's what I have to do to keep this. Fine. I'll do all of that. I apologized. I said, I did not realize that that was a condition, that I couldn't drink. I do realize now. And then I went to my bosses after that plea. I pled guilty. I had done it. It's true. I was drinking a lot. I went to my bosses and said, guys, I'm not okay. And I don't know if I can stop drinking because I drink to escape this reality. I don't drink and go out and party with my friends. I drink until I fall asleep because I can't believe this is my life and I don't know how to cope with it. This is not really alcoholism. This is depression and I need your help. And they essentially, they told me to go to a doctor from OCFS. OCFS literally picked a doctor for me because they wanted to make sure that I was fit to go back to work. And I went to the doctor and the doctor essentially said, you are depressed. I don't know how you wouldn't be depressed with this situation going on. You're all over the news. Everybody knows you. People say crazy things to you and about you on the internet. You can't not be depressed. And the best thing for you would be to go back to work. That's your sense of purpose. That's what you need to go back to work and doing what you love to do. And they got the doctor's report and they called me upstairs. And I was like, I went to my law clerk and I was like, I'm going back to work. I'm so excited. And I went upstairs and they told me to no longer come to the Hall of Justice. I was not allowed to report to the building, get my stuff and leave. And I said, but the doctor said, and they said, yeah, we don't care what the doctor said. And I said, the doctor said that I'm depressed and the best thing would be me coming back to work. And you essentially tell me I'm not allowed in the building. So at that point, I was feeling like this is like an attack and I don't know how to stop it. Like I'm willing to take my lumps. Okay, you guys can beat me up. I lost. When you lose, you got to take your lumps. So I'm like, fine, you guys jump me in, but you can't kick me out. Like I didn't even do this. After that, I got arrested a bunch more times for nothing. And those charges all essentially kept getting dismissed. And then in May, it was my birthday and I got really frustrated. I couldn't go to work. I had asked again. I couldn't go to rehab. I had asked again. And I was feeling really depressed and I wasn't allowed to go to my job. And everyone in Rochester was saying crazy stuff to me. And I told my sister, it's my birthday and I'm sad. I think I should go to Thailand. And she was like, I think that's a wonderful idea. I only had 2 months left on the conditional discharge. And I was like, I'll go to Thailand and I'll come back in August. This shit will be over. I'll have a great vacation with my kids to kind of deal with some of the trauma that this has caused in our lives. And I'll come back and it'll be over. That's a great way to fill my cup. I had read Eat, Pray, Love. I was excited. And I went to Thailand. And before I went to Thailand, there was a bad blow in my car. And it was not me. I'm not the only person that drives my car, but there's a camera. And that person was on camera blowing into the device to drive my vehicle and they were intoxicated. They put it back. They went in the house. They went to sleep. Now it's not a secret anymore because my daughter did an interview about this and it was her. But it was a big deal at the time because she was underage. And I was like, look, I don't care.
How many of our kids do stuff that's wrong?
Right. And it was the same situation. She had gone out the night before. I had went and got her and brought her home. She had drunk. It wasn't that she was intoxicated, but it still registered some alcohol in her body from the night before. She put the thing back and went to sleep. You know what I mean? She didn't, I was like, that's what I want my daughter to do. That's exactly what I want her to do. If it says, hey, even if you're not intoxicated, you have alcohol in your system, go to sleep. So that happened and I had to pay a fine, but there was no violation from probation. It happened again in May. And I was like, well, I already know what happens when there's a bad blow. I can go to Thailand. I'll be back in August. I went to Thailand. My attorney contacted me in the middle of May. And I hadn't heard from him. I hadn't spoken to him. He left me a message. He contacted me and said, you have court on Monday. And it was Saturday. And I was in Thailand. And I was like, you know that I'm in Thailand. I can't go to court on Monday. And Judge Aronson issued a warrant for my arrest. He told me on Saturday.
Now, you know what? Now, you know what? I'm going to ask you, and I've only had one part two, but I think that because typically our episodes are about an hour, and I really want to dig in. No, you don't talk too much. You're talking just enough because this is a powerful story, and I think it needs to be out there, and it needs to be heard and understood. And on top of being heard and understood, I want to dig into what your experience was behind when you were actually behind bars, and then I really want to dig into the recovery afterwards and how you've worked on healing and now how you are working on helping others as well. And so I want to do that justice, and I don't want to try to wrap that up in a minute or two. So would you be willing to come back and continue this and do a part two with me here where we continue to talk about this? Okay.
Yeah, so it's funny. I told you this last time I saw you, when I saw you on the plane. I told you that I've been trying to tell this story and it ends at Thailand, and I can't make it not. It ends with me coming back from Thailand, and I don't know how to tell it any quicker than that.
So that's fine. And we're going to pause here. We're going to end at Thailand, but you got to promise me that you're going to come back and we're going to schedule a part two so that everyone can hear the rest of the story, because you know what, this is part of your gutter, but it didn't define you, and you have been able to still move to greatness and are doing great things, and it never made you gutter. You were always great. You just went through some things, and people go through things. And you know, as I close out and I do a mindfulness minute, as what we usually do on our closeouts here, is that we so often we think that who we are and what we do defines us, and we think that it becomes the only thing that's important, and it's so much bigger than that, because even when you struggle to get somewhere and you reach that success, God can take it away from you at any moment in time, and you never know when that's going to happen. There's probably something he wants us to learn from whatever he's doing, and whatever reason he's taking it away from us. If we're talking specifically about Leticia, whatever he took some of these things away from her, or he allowed her to go through these experiences because he wanted her to learn, grow, and develop so she could do something that was even greater later, because there's a divine purpose, and it's usually to teach us or allow us to learn a lesson. And so, everybody's lessons are different. Everybody has different things that they go through, and some of us reach greatness at early stages and some of us lose it. But it doesn't mean that you can't reach that greatness again, especially if you follow God's plan. So I know that Leticia is continuing to follow God's plan for her, that she's doing some amazing and some great things, that she's helping so many people. And I will argue, and I have argued with her, that there's more that she's supposed to be doing with this, from writing her book and telling some other stories that I'm putting her out there in public, that she's going to do because I put her out there. And now she's going to have to do it because, y'all, I'm committing her to actually writing this book and to finishing it, because people need to hear this and the injustices, and you need to be the voice that sticks up for us. And hey, let's make the movie too, and let's get paid off of this thing, because this thing is crazy. But with all that being said, I thank everybody from tuning in and listening to From the Gutter to Greatness. And there will be a part two on this episode, so stay tuned for Only God Can Judge Me. I appreciate you listening, and let's continue to move from our gutters to greatness, everybody.
Hey, yeah. That's it for today's episode. So head on over to iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener that posts a review on iTunes will win a chance in the grand prize drawing for a $25,000 private epic VIP day with Dr. Miller himself. Be sure to head on over to guttertogreatness.com and pick up a free copy of Dr. Miller's gift. And join us on the next episode.